Here we go. Focus Forge podcast. It's been 6, 7, 8 months since we did our last episode, but now we're doing guests. And our first guest is Mike Eversole, NCAA Division II Associate Head Coach at Lake Erie College. He's going on your third year there now, right, in 2025?
Yeah, this is my third year.
Third year. He actually coached my younger brother, Greg's kid, Bubba. He's a character in itself, but Mike was Bubba's favorite coach he ever had in college by far. Mike does a lot of things the right way. Lake Erie, he was brought in when they were kind of struggling, and now they're growing and getting better fast, and it's cool to see from the outside. So we're just going to dive into a lot of different stuff today. The mental piece, what Mike is looking for in players at the next level, where he's looking, what he's looking for, and we're just going to dive right into it. So Mike, thanks for coming on, brother.
Yeah, of course, man. Appreciate you guys having me on. So excited to, just chop it up a little bit. Hopefully provide value along the way.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So give us a little bit of a rundown. So you've been at Lake Erie. This is your third year. How are things going for you guys so far leading up to your first game coming up in a couple weeks?
Yeah, no, I mean, we go to the ABCA convention every year. So they had it in Washington, D.C. this year. And not to sound like every coach in the country that, cracks like what sounds like a coaching joke, but it's like, man, how do you love your guys? I love them. We went 0-0 this fall. When you play against yourselves constantly, you go home and you think your offense is really bad and your pitching staff is really good. And then other days it's obviously vice versa. So I think what we did a really good job this year of just, it was just essentially focused on what matters and what doesn't. And are we getting better today? And are we, preparing guys accordingly? Are we learning from mistakes? Are we essentially just keeping it simple, which I felt like that was something we didn't do when we first came here because the room was a lot of freshmen. So maybe I feel like at times we overcomplicated it. But I think with where our team is at now, I think they are just ready. Like, I don't think any of us actually fully get it, but I think they're in a position now where they do understand it. And I think they're just in a spot where the players have just fully ran the team itself. The coaches were just there to help lead, organize, obviously maintain structure from within the program, like keep guys honest and accountable. But I mean, when it comes to just like expectations, what we have to get done today, how we're going to do it, this is what we do here. I think the guys have just kind of ran with that. I think we brought in talented freshmen. We're not losing guys at all. So, we're having guys in the program for 3, 4, 5 years. And, that's just something that's not happening a ton. It's, a guy plays well and he wants to go look for something bigger. Our guy plays well and he wants to come back and wants to know what we're going to go out and recruit in summer to bring, the following year and what's coming in next fall. And it's just, it's just different. I think we've been able to create a very trustworthy room. We're very close with the guys, but obviously at the end of the day, there is that player-coach line that, they can't cross, and we definitely don't want to cross either. But there's just consistent mutual understanding, and I think that's why they feel probably the most prepared since I've been here, and the experience part helps with that too.
Yeah, I feel like that's a huge testament to you guys. I mean, I remember when Bubba was having calls with you a few years ago, when he was leaving. He was at Danville at the end of JUCO, right? He went Swick, Marshall, Swick, Danville. Yeah. So when he was having conversations with you, I was actually in his room when he had one of the early calls with you, and I was already at Southeastern at that point, and I'm like, oh shit, okay, like he gets it. He's not talking at you; he's having a conversation with you. And I feel like Greg and I have had a ton of conversations about this from Bubba's career with you. The one thing that always stood out to us and what made you different than 99.9% of coaches out there is this wasn't one of those things where you were barking orders at him and, hey, these are the drills, these are the cues that we're using offensively. Here's what you get. It was, okay, what gets you right? Not just physically with your move, but what gets you right mentally? And you even had conversations with Greg and I about Bubba, because we know Bubba's kind of a different guy, Yep. But you were always looking to, hey, what gets you right? And obviously, if it's not just with Bubba, you were doing that with everybody, and that's why you have guys stay for 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, that is unheard of right now.
Yeah.
So
at the end of the day, right? Like as coaches, we want to win. It's our livelihood. Players want to win too. And it's just not about us. Like we're not the ones playing. The guys are the ones playing, and we need to win, and they want to win. So we might as well try to find out like how can we get the best out of them, and how can we marry that with maybe the structure of how we're going to go about things offensively, or what we're going to talk about defensively, or how we train in the weight room with our strength conditioning guy, right? Like all those things. I mean, everybody has essentially like their plan of, hey, this is how we're going to do stuff, but how we get guys to execute from within that. I mean, yeah, you're right. It has to be different. I mean, and then the guys that, are similar, you find excuses maybe to get them in the same group or put them in the same BP group, or make sure they're lifting together. We've done like a big brother, little brother system, who's a guy coming in next year that's very similar to this guy. Maybe we pair them together. And I mean, we have tons of examples where that's worked out extremely efficiently. Obviously, you can't please everybody all the time. But I think it gives guys a really good pathway and understanding on, I get to be myself here, and I get to get better along the way. I'm going to get my opportunities to obviously perform. And Bubba definitely kept me honest too along the way. That's for sure.
He's a different breed. We got to bring him on here one of these days. Shoot, we probably should have brought him on here for this. That would have been a field day of a podcast episode.
Oh, my goodness. We probably would have had to find ways to keep him on point.
Yeah, we probably would have had I would have just spent 3 hours in post-production editing out the overwhelming majority of what was said, which is classic. But yeah, you just brought up the idea of, when you have guys like a big brother situation where some guys are similar and you put them in the same groups, and, whether those are guys that are here now or are coming next fall, whatever it is. Are you talking primarily about their move offensively and what gets them right? Are we talking what gets them right up here too?
Everything. Everything.
Yeah.
They're from the same area. Maybe they're both from a single parent household. There's relatability. They're both out of state guys. They're both right-handed hitters. Maybe they both struggle with spin, and it doesn't matter if they're right-handed or left. I mean, everything. We got a freshman that we paired up with a returner from last year. They're literally the same person, literally the same person. The guys actually kind of have some fun with it, because they see it too. But ultimately, I do think it's made the younger guy better because he's been able to learn just so much from the guy above him. I mean, last year's group, it was Zimba Cadiz was taking care of Travis Yankovic, and Travis was a guy who felt like, well, Zimba had a good year last year. Not sure if they're going to play me. Not sure where I'm at. I mean, he worked hard, right? But there were times where it was just any meeting you ever had with Travis trying to work on his game. It was like, well, yeah, Zimba was telling me this. Zimba was doing and it's just, you're talking about a guy who's from a whole entire different culture and country to a guy that's from Ohio, and how they value things very equally as a player. It also helps they play similar position. Man, it was really cool to kind of tap into watching how they made each other better. And I feel like that's why they came back, playing as well as I felt like they had this fall and so far this preseason. So it's just kind of everything. I mean, you got to look into it. I mean, I don't call it overthinking. I just think if the building got set on fire, who's going to, is somebody going to take care of the guy next to them? Is somebody going to be able to remain calm and kind of defuse things? Because players have highs and lows, and we need their high to reach a certain point. And we definitely need their lows to just stay under control, because our game's already super negative. So we ultimately need to surround them around guys that they feel they have a sense of understanding from.
That's good, man. That's really good. Greg, you got anything over there?
Well, yeah. I mean, what you're describing, in order for you to pair guys together based on just guys who are going to vibe, right, and who are similar, who require the same kind of work, have the same sort of process. In order to even start that process, you got to know who they are, what they're about. And that's a credit to you because you do that work. You dig in with those guys. Do you see other guys out there who do that? Because in my experience with two sons, not everybody is like that. And I'm not trying to condemn baseball coaches or hitting guys, but when we found you, we were like, wow, this is what we were hoping for. But do you see other guys doing that at that level?
Yeah, I mean, I think I spoke on this a few weeks ago when I was actually doing another podcast. I think we have coaches in our conference who I think do a really good job. Now, I don't know how far they go into it. No idea there. I have no idea how far they go into it. I think there are some transactional coaches. I think other times there's guys who, take it with a similar approach, maybe don't go into it as deep as maybe I feel I do at times. And then other times it's like, hey, we've been good before, myself as a coach got here. It kind of runs itself. We just need guys to come in and perform, do their thing. I just know when I came here, it was just like, we need to actually build something that could just be long lasting. I want guys to remember who they played for. I want them to, because I just see it like whenever I was in school, right? I mean, it happened in high school, happened in college. It happened when I was even a GA. It was like, oh, well, that's insert school name for you. And it's like, I just don't want to hear that. Like there's pros and cons to every place. So we're ultimately trying to do our best to offer a good experience. And, there's highs and lows, right? Like sometimes you got issues in the dorm. Other times, like the weather's cold like it is right now. And that maybe, creates some issues with the heat on campus. Like, I don't know, there's just pros and cons to every place. I think essentially you just got to be people taking care of people. And I think we have coaches in our conference that do that. I think there's also coaches who they do to a certain extent. But ultimately, I think we're all here for the same reasons. I mean, we're all Division II coaches and we're all like smaller schools and we have smaller campuses. And so I would just think to a certain degree, right? Like you got to look out for your guys and you got to get to know them to a certain level. I mean, I feel like it's more of the higher levels, I guess is what I'm getting at, is where maybe they don't, I don't want to say they don't want to dive into it. I just don't think time efficiency, they can afford to do it.
And they don't have to necessarily. I mean,
sure, it'd be a huge challenge for coaches who are maybe at our level that maybe scale up one day. Could be a huge, challenge and adjustment. I mean, I don't know. I don't know every coach in our conference personally, but I've gotten the opportunity. I mean, like Tiffin's head coach, like very good guy, like very good dude, funny, older guy, not old, but like older guy. Like he's got great experience. Finley's head coach, I mean, he did a great job when he was at Heidelberg. Now he's been at Finley and he's done well. And I mean, you see some of these guys out on the road and you get to talk and I mean, they're just good. They're just good people. Walsh's pitching coach is a good friend of mine, coached his youngest son when he was in high school. And it's like anytime, his son comes home, like we all get together, we go hang out. Like, I mean, we're like family friends. And, we'll even talk about certain players and there's times where we get the guy that they want and they get the guy that we wanted and hey, how's so-and-so doing since he's been on campus? Man, I tell you what, I didn't know he was dealing with this, or I don't know. I think it's just people just trying to get better and how they can take care of people. I think that's what coaches at our level do, but to certain degrees I'm not too sure. I can only talk about how we have approached it, and sometimes you need to do more and a lot of times you just need to do a lot less.
Yeah, and there's always two sides to every story because we're hearing stories from players, right? And odds are, I mean, if you get 100 stories from 100 different guys, how many of them are going to be overwhelmingly positive from the last 4 or 5 years with what's happened, right? I mean, these massive rosters from COVID, guys bouncing, the transfer portal. So, of course, there's two sides to every story. But I'm telling you, you're different in that you've got 22 hitters. You do the work to dig in and create like 20 different approaches, 20 different cues to make a guy not only right, but even better. And I don't think that that's widespread. I think you're unique. And Billy, wouldn't you agree with that? I mean, that's pretty hard to find. guys who are willing to create different game plans for each hitter.
Yeah, I mean, shit. I mean, I've been at massive schools. I've been at small schools. And I was lucky enough at Southeastern to have a coaching staff that wasn't the same as Mike, but they brought in, it was different because they had guys that came that were polished, that were 22 years old, that have been through it. They know how to perform. They know how to, handle pressure, and they know what gets them right. So I enjoyed that school the most. But no, what you're talking about, that's not a reoccurring theme, because he's right when he says that sometimes it might be. Now, we don't know this, but from the stories I've heard from players at high-level programs, like when they have so many guys that are higher caliber physically, whatever it is, just a lot of guys, they don't have the time, or they just don't feel like they have to go out there and really get to know them. Unfortunately, it's, can you perform right now? And guys have a handful of days, maybe even a few weeks in the fall to go out there and show who they are and what they can do. And if they're not performing to their standards, okay, next.
Yeah,
and that very well might be the case. Yeah, and that's unfortunate, but it's the reality, and we're not going to change that. But that's why it was so nice for us when Bubba went and played under you, Mike, because Bubba, is a crazy talented guy. He always was super physical. He was just different, man. And when Bubba was right, he was right, and I think he was one of the best hitters in all of college baseball when he was right. But that was the thing, is how long could he stay right? And it was the same way with me as a player. But because of you, he stayed right most of the time. And when he was down, you helped bring him right back up. And it wasn't with, that's why another reason why I think you're so good is each guy needs something different. Some guys need that David Goggins, I'm going to light your ass up. And that's what they need to get right. Other guys need, hey, calm down. Like, remember who you are. Chill out. It's all good. It's okay. And Bubba needed that a lot of the time. Sometimes he needed the other way, but you took the time to get to know him, figure out who he is and what gets him back centered. And I think that's why you guys stay in touch, and that's why you have so many guys coming through your program. Like, it really is a special thing. And that's why as soon as we started this podcast having guests, I'm like, yeah, Mike, because I feel like if so many coaches could just watch you in your day-to-day, although you're young, if they could just watch you in your day-to-day and the way you operate your hitters and your program with Hutch, I think baseball would be in a much better place, personally.
Well, I definitely appreciate it for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's good to be young, and what I feel is in a good position, right? When we came here, it was very simple. It's only up from here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we win a lot more baseball games last year, and then, like we're not losing guys. We continue to bring in talented freshmen. Still voted last in the conference. So, yeah, so it's no, I enjoy it. I do. I really enjoy it, because I think there's a degree of folks that maybe think that we're still like that. And I think there's a certain degree of folks that are like, man, dude, like, I think they're better, but not better than us, type of thing. And that's okay. I think that's outside noise anyways. You brought up a really good point, talking about like other coaches at higher levels and stuff. I think essentially, I don't think anybody wants to cut the high school guy. I don't think guys enjoy cutting people. I think it's just the timing of these rules and the timing of these changes. I just don't think there's a good time to put any of it in place, because, recruiting never stops. And I think we're starting to see a transition this year with like 2026 high school class is, again, I'm reaching out to guys because we take time to watch them a little bit the summer before. Yes, I know that makes a long process. It's like, man, you're going to talk to a guy for a year and may not get him. And it's like, well, they talk to a really good player for a year and also get him. And, usually when we've lost guys, we've lost guys to Division I programs. We lost some guys in our conference that, sometimes it's like, man, dude, I'm really supportive of you. I think you're making the right decision. It definitely everything you're looking for. It sounds like a good fit over there. Other times, I definitely struggle when maybe there's no reason, there's no conversation to that. Maybe that's just my age being young. Like, why don't you want to come play for me? Why don't you want to come play for us? Right. I just think college ball is, I'm not saying it's going to get into a crazy perfect way where everybody gets to win in the recruiting cycle. I guess what I'm getting at is like, I'm starting to see a slow play on the high school guy. And for whatever reason, I mean, a lot of people have their opinion on it. Some are like, well, they got to get down to 34. They're going to wait. Well, they're going to hit the portal first because they don't like high school guys. That's why it's slow. And I think essentially, I think everybody's just trying to learn what do we define as being the right way within our program, because every school is different. Every campus is different. And every administration values something different. Every need of every institution is different. So I think essentially people are trying to learn and grow and adjust. And unfortunately, we all have these things called phones, and we all have Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. And essentially, sometimes that's only where you get to hear one side of the story, not the other side, where it's like, I see the kids tweet on Twitter. And then because you know that coach personally, hey, man, what happened with so-and-so? And it's like, oh, man, dude, it was a terrible situation, man. We feel terrible. Like, we freaking love that kid. But with the roster restriction, he was our last pickup, like, so on and so forth. And that's why it didn't work out right now. And, man, like, this stinks. And, and I'm not saying everybody out there has been perfect, but I'm hearing a lot more of like those conversations. I don't think a guy looks at his staff and says, hey, man, you guys ready to like crush a 16, 17-year-old's heart today? Like, you guys ready?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Again, I think people that go through it, I think there is a partial sense of almost embarrassment, as if like they've done something wrong or they're not good enough. And it's always got to kind of be somebody else's fault. So like, I think that's why we hear so much more negative instead of like, man, our system is kind of broken. How can we all collaboratively work together to make it better? And I think there's been some laws passed recently that I think could help schools with retention and actual player development. Like the one, for example, it starts next fall, like a guy can play. And this is Division II. I think it's already passed in Division I. Could be wrong. I only know Division II, where it's like we can have a guy play in 30% or less of the games, and we could still redshirt him, where the rule right now is like you get one at bat, like that's your freshman year. And I mean, you talk about like confidence and understanding. I mean, we can almost put a guy in the lineup because, man, he's crushing our guys. We think he's going to impact us right now. We could get him some at-bats and be like, man, we were wrong. And we can still find ways to maybe get him experience and potentially save that year. Or maybe he just runs with it, right? So I think there's just a lot. I think there's a lot going on. I think there's a lot of things that we all have still to learn, and I definitely don't want to speak in absolutes, but I think that's another issue with the recruiting stuff is everybody's out here speaking in absolutes, and none of us actually know at the end of the day. Got to do what's best for our schools and our programs and what we can realistically do, right? So, and then the last part of that, going back to Bubba, I used to train players. It was at a barn in the middle of nowhere in Alliance, Ohio. And that's where I did a lot of my high school like training stuff when I was a grad assistant and was doing high school summer ball. And I was outside. It just got done freaking raining. You get no cell service in the barn, so I'm outside sitting up against this trailer and I'm talking to Bubba. I got no clue what I'm doing because I had never been like in a full-time recruiting position. I'm just like, all right, man, we need a position player. We need a guy right now. We have to get a guy with experience. And it was just like, screw it. It's the worst that happens, So, and I'm talking on the phone with him, and you have zero background. Didn't know Big Brother played here and there. Didn't know Dad was known like this. Like didn't know any of those things. So you just get on the phone, man, and you get off the phone. I'm like, well, I mean, he either thinks that like I just really care about him as a person, or maybe he didn't hear enough about the program. I mean, there's sometimes like you just don't know, right? Every kid values something differently, and that's something I always tell guys is, hey, look, man, I'd love to talk about everything that we do and how we do it. But essentially, like all you guys have different things that matter most to you. Like I would like to start there And then depending on if it aligns with maybe what you're looking for, we can expand into other things that are maybe a little bit more precise to us. I don't like being one-sided in the phone call. And I think it's good for high school kids to hear that too, because again, like you're still talking to a generation of players who, during COVID, like didn't leave their house, didn't go engage with people in person, like missed out on some really important functional parts of their life, and how to just develop good people skills. So it kind of forces them to talk a little bit more, but I think it just gives them, I mean, dude, like I'm a human just like you, man. I go to Chipotle just like you do. I got my car just like you do. Obviously I have a wife, but at one point I liked a girl just like you did in high school. I think when you kind of make yourself come off as a person, I feel like there's just trust associated with that. I think that's something. There's several coaches in our conference that I think do that really well. And that's why when we go out on the road and we're all recruiting the same guys, essentially, I think deep down, I think that's why we can actually have like a good time being around each other. And obviously when you're on the field, it's never personal. We're trying to win. We're trying to compete. And then at the end of the season, like, we'll all give credit where credit's due, hopefully. At least I know I will.
Yeah.
So.
And it's so cool for us to hear. I mean, because full transparency with what we do for a living, we hear from players. Really, primarily it's players. And when you mentioned how this generation of high school guys, you're right with COVID, they missed out on a very important time in terms of socializing, building certainty within themselves, going out there and having conversations, hanging out with people, whatever it is. But it's funny because we only get their side, and a lot of the times it is negative. Right. And from college guys, it is negative, but it's not always negative in the sense to where they're bad mouthing their coaching staff. Because when guys do that to us, we don't get involved in that because we don't know the intricate details, and that's not our place. We don't know, so we're not going to offer advice on that. The only thing we can do is give them tools to control how they feel in spite of whatever is going on over there. So, but it's very interesting, and I'm very glad that we're having this call because we are getting a different perspective on this that I think we need as guys that are helping these players on the mental piece. No, it's super cool to hear because this is something that we haven't heard in a while. So I don't know, man. I kind of wanted, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, players just need to understand that they don't have it figured out. And that's the best part. Like coaches, we don't have it all figured out either. And I could definitely see where it comes off. Player reaches out and is like, man, I'm really struggling. Like, I played bad. Like there's always more to the story. It's like, man, I've been playing really good. I got an opportunity. Then I played bad and then they sat me. And it's like, sometimes that could be true, but it could be because, they have enough data to show that maybe you really struggle against left-handed pitching. And they had a conversation with you on how they're throwing a lefty that next game. They want to give this guy an opportunity. Well, players don't hear that conversation. They just hear they're not playing that day or that game, maybe. Other times it's, maybe they got in trouble. Like they didn't show the coaching staff their grades. Maybe they have a bad grade. Maybe they got an email from a teacher and that's why, hey, we got to sit you one of these games. Like, there's always more to it, I feel like, on both sides. But again, it does go back to, I said it so much to a point where guys like Bubba would even laugh about it. But it's just like, you have to have that ability to actually respond and do it in a way that like allows you to make certain adjustments, whether it's a mental, a physical. I don't like to come off as like a figure it out type guy. Obviously, figure it out to me, I think it correlates with the word feel. And if you're an older guy and you don't have feel, man, like that's going to be really tough to a certain degree.
Can't teach it.
But when you're a young guy, it's young guy makes a mistake and I'm like, hell yeah, I loved it so much. We're going to do it again. And the guy just like, he ran the bunt D wrong. He's out of position. He's got no clue. I loved it so much. We're going to do it again. And guys start laughing. And I'm just like, well, no, dude, like we're in our room. We're in our space. Like we're at our field. Like we're doing our thing. And let's see the guy execute it, and let's pump him with a lot of love and a lot of confidence because he's a freshman and he's like in a team practice, like shaking, and you're like, holy crap, man, like calm down. And then the older guys, like, out there, it's just another day in the office. And it's just being able to being able to fill in the gaps to keep them all kind of on the same level. And obviously the only separators that I would like to see and what you see on some of the best teams is like, talent's cool, like size and all that stuff. This guy's got really loud bat speed. This guy's got, a pro slider, and he's a sophomore in college. Like, obviously there's outliers to this, but the guys that can the guys who play hard and they have experience and they just detach themselves from certain outcomes. And a guy who I think does a really good job of that right now, and always has, is freaking Graham Solak, man. Like, Graham is always like happy-go-lucky, always. Like, he could have the worst at-bat ever. And I mean, before, I think when he was a young guy, when I first came here, it was like, man, my bad. And it's like, you're good, man. Like, hey, did you get a good pitch to hit? Yep. Were you on time with it? Yep. All right, cool. Like, you just missed it. Cool. Just got under it. Like, whatever. I mean, just obviously to a certain degree, it's like, all right, Graham, let's go. But I think if you know your guys, and you know like what they're capable of, and you've seen it and you watched it and you've worked with them, you kind of know where to toe those lines, I guess. But Graham now being a senior is just like, it's just talking to a different kid now. And I think he's going to have a great year. And I think other coaches definitely, if there's one guy that, hey, this guy can't beat us, probably Graham on their list, I would have to be willing to bet. And I would say Graham Solak's a guy like that. And man, we got a freshman that's here now, Greg Kennedy, on the mound, dude. Like, kid's going to be really good, really, really good. And it's because he does not care. He cares so much that he doesn't care at all. And that's a gift. 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid discuss. And we have another even position player that's a freshman that I feel is like that. You just can't teach those things. But I think being able to put them in a room with guys who've already went through it and failed so much when they were young guys, and now they know how to control it, just think it's made the room better. It's made the team way better. It's made everything just better. But
can you see that when you're recruiting? Do you look for that for guys who don't seem to be, so, oh my God, I need this so bad? Can you see that as a recruiter?
Man, sometimes you can. Other times you can't. There's been times where, guy comes to us and I'm like, coach, like I never saw him be a guy to like, be a little fearful. And it's like, he's a freshman. It's his first couple weeks, man. Like, let's just keep being there for him and let's pump him with some confidence. And it's like, okay. And then maybe you go through another period and you're like, man, dude, like this guy kind of freaks out a little bit playing the game, man. Like, sometimes I think it's really difficult, for whatever reason. Other times it's like, man, dude, this guy's yipped up, dude. It's like, this guy's at a showcase and like he is playing pepper with the backstop. And it's not because he can't play or isn't good. It's because like he thinks that not who he is as a player. He thinks like who he is as a person is defined by this moment because there's a bunch of guys behind the fence with radar guns. And it's like the craziest thing ever. Because you get on the phone, you're like, hey man, like good to see you this weekend. You guys make it back home safe. Yeah, coach, like I'm good. Sorry I didn't do too well. And I'm like, hey man, we watched you throw. Like you went 5 innings, 3-hit baseball, not walking guys. I know, but my velo was down. And it's like, hey dude, like that's okay. It's like, wow, instead of you being up to 89, you were only up to 86. Like, I don't think you're at risk of being hurt. I think it's just, it's July now and you've been throwing since February. And I think it's just getting to that time of year. And like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think you went out there and you competed really well. Man, dude, it's just crazy to have to like remind guys that sometimes. Other times it's like, hey, I didn't know what was going on. I just know it was working out and I just kept riding it. And it's like, those are like the goofballs that every guy needs in their program. And man, we got some goofballs too. We had some goofballs last year when Bubba was here. Like at times Bubba was the goofball.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, sometimes when you recruit, man, but that's always a question I ask the guy, like, how's the home life? How's mom and dad? Like, how do you think, how's the support at home? And sometimes like, it's like, okay, well, we can offer him support to get him out of that. And other times it's like, man, dude, that's kind of like above man, that's a tough situation. I don't know if that would work. Like, you hear a lot of different things. And recruiting is no one size fits all. Like, we obviously need to identify what's the job that we're filling. Who's the guy that maybe we just left? You know, like, because he graduated. You know, where are we at in the class? Like, there's just so many factors. But it's just like, I feel like I don't know who I run into it more with pitchers or position players. Position players, it's like, well, I know I got hits in game, but like, I wasn't like on the barrel on them. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, how good your bat is how you hit 350. Like, that's something Michael Early at Texas A&M talked about during his ABCA presentation in Nashville 2 years ago. I'll never forget it. It's literally a quote in my offensive presentation at the beginning of the year. How good your bat is how you hit 350. It's not because I want guys to end cap balls and get jammed and record hits that way. It's like, baseball is really hard, and if you're not always on time or not always on the barrel or whatever, like, you can still find ways to be successful that get yourself on base and impact. Like, we want to think that everything is good, even if it's bad, because we need to think positive outcomes constantly, I guess is what I'm getting at. And when you high school guys, it gets really difficult sometimes because prep baseball in our state, I think, does a great job. Maybe I'm a little biased. Kyle Weldon, the scouting director, is a great friend of mine, and he does an awesome job. Jordan Cairo, he's the associate coach at Wright State. He was the guy at, who was doing that job here in Ohio as well. I think the whole PBR brand here in Ohio does a really, really good job. And I think they're everywhere, and they actually go watch high school games, and they cover the state tournament, and they run certain events. And I just think they do enough to give players an opportunity to showcase themselves to coaches, to actually be evaluated. But I think the company, the brand, I think they get very excited about, wow, our state has good baseball players. But I think on the flip side, the kids are like, well, I'm not ranked in the top 100. Like, I can't play Division I, or I'm not going to get a scholarship. And it happens every year. Like, we have guys that are highly ranked that play well. And then we have guys that were probably never in the PBR system that played really well. Like John Poppy last year you couldn't find him in a PBR system, but I thought he threw very well for being a senior, knowing who he is, knowing what he has to do. And the whole team already knew what his job was going to be. And it's like, that's how he prepared. So I just think there's too many expectations that players put on themselves that actually hurt them. More than anything, it's like, well, I didn't hit 100 off the bat during the workout, and it's like, cool, man, like you were like a consistent 97. It wasn't an average of 94, and then you hit 101. Like, cool, it's good to see that it's there. But player development, when you bring in freshmen, it's about raising their floor, not getting them to touch the ceiling too soon. That's what their mental game as well, man. I mean, I want guys to be ready to go and locked in and all that stuff. And I mean, hell, man, there's guys who've lost people, and they're like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to practice tonight. And you're like, all right, psycho. Man, I know if it were me, I'm in the car and I'm going home. We've had guys just be like, oh, dude, screw that. We got velo day today. I'm gonna take it all out on the ball today. And then they hit a PR and they got 20 dudes pumped up for them, and it's just like, man, dude, you're going through some shit, but you still found a way to be positive today. And that's just crazy. So I don't know. You definitely, you just got to use your resources when you're on the road. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Ask the coaches, can you locate the parent if you're watching the kid? What's the background of the family? What's the experience? I mean, there's just so many factors that go into it, but it all starts with what are the jobs we're trying to fill? So it kind of centralizes our focus a little more, I would say.
When does that become a red flag for you, though? So you got a kid who you talk to him after an event, like you said, the kid who was 86 instead of 89. When does that become a red flag for you? Man, this kid is going to be kicking his own nuts in every time he doesn't come through for us or whatever. Is there a point where that kind of turns on you?
Yeah, I think it just kind of depends where we're at in the process. If it's like, I don't know, I think it just kind of depends where we're at. I think we need to be able to reflect on conversations that we have that have nothing to do with baseball, because I definitely make time to have those as well. And sometimes it's just like, man, dude, he's just like an ultra competitor being a little tough on himself. Other times it's like, they're talking to us, but they're being told that, this Division I's going to call them, and they're now upset because they didn't hit 89, 90, 91 that day. Now the Division I won't call them. That's why they don't feel good enough now for the Division II guys. So I think you just got to understand their entire landscape. To be honest, I wouldn't necessarily call them red flags. I just think players do become a product of their environment. And I think we've seen that just with our guys. So I don't want to say, hey, we're going to take all these risks. I don't think those are character flaws. I think it's like, okay, I'd rather have to teach a guy to dial him down than to have to like find ways to lift him up and motivate him to actually be present with what we're trying to do with him or the team. So if that kind of answers that question, I don't know if there's red flags on that. I think it's just more, I just think when you're watching the game, you can tell if he's worrying about the right things or not. So we got to marry what that evaluation is with just, would he become a product of his environment with us? And that would be, would he flourish well with our group? And I love seeing the guys that, Hutch recruited here. They've been here, this is their third year now. And I didn't recruit any of those guys. But it's cool for them to like talk about like, man, dude, like, how about so-and-so? Remember him 2 years ago? And I'm like, I know, isn't it crazy? And they're like, man, dude, like totally different guy. And it's like, what changed? And like, there's just kind of one common theme. They just stopped caring in a good way. Like they care about the team. They care about being successful, but they used to make baseball who they are, and now they don't. And when you can do that, you will certainly detach yourself from outcomes that allow you to actually develop and perform at a high level and reach that ceiling that we're not trying to touch too early in your career. And it's actually really cool once you get there with some guys, but yeah.
Man, that's definitely interesting, because I want to kind of go back to what you said a second ago about how you've had guys that, they had a family member pass away or someone close to them, and then they go to the yard or they go and have velo day and they hit a PR, right? I think it's amazing how tragedies or just a complete shift in something outside of the game can have an impact on your state and how much potential you're going to tap into. Like I can give an example of, when I got in that car accident, broke my back, came out to play for Dinkle on senior day, and I just got cleared to play. Hadn't touched the bat in 8 months, swung it the day before and a little bit that morning. I was cleared to play, but I wasn't, I hadn't touched a game in 8 months. But because I had spent so much time seeing those outcomes in advance, and I thought that I would never be able to play the game again, I didn't give a shit if I didn't play for the last 8 months. I didn't care that I didn't do rehab. I didn't care about any of those things. All I thought was, I get to play this game right now. You know what I'm saying? And then I went out there and performed better than I ever had. Why? Well, because I had a different perspective, and I completely realized that, hey, this game is a gift. This is something that I was almost taken away from me right then. And I can imagine, when you go through loss, you go through things like that, and you got guys that are immediately wanting to go to the field and they're hitting PRs. That does not surprise me. And those are the guys that are special. So it's just
the craziest part, man, is like nobody on the team knew. Like only us knew.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that this player vocalized to anybody other than the coaching staff. So, I was with our position guys. We were hitting that day. So I wasn't even there for it, but our coaches group chat's going crazy, so-and-so's a dog. He had a freaking day. Like, oh my gosh. And we're like, and the question got brought up, like, does anybody know that he's dealing with this right now? and you're just, and again, I feel like you can kind of read the room if people know. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. And he's like, just keeping it to himself. He just wanted us to know, and that was it. And I don't know if it's still that way or not. I don't know. All I know is like, you see who that player is now, and you can already kind of like picture who he could be for us. And it's like, yeah, like whole place could be on fire, and he doesn't care if he's the only one in the building. He'll find a way to put it out. Like he's just got that it factor to him, and
Special.
it's just different. It's different for the age. It is. It's just different, especially in today's dynamic, where people fall in love with being told what they want to hear, and that's part of the issues that players run into. Like they don't always love what they hear, and when they do that, they kind of run from it, and other guys they kind of flourish with it. So, we kind of gotta evaluate that part too. When we're on the recruiting trail, I mean, we can be as honest and fully transparent with a guy, and sometimes that could be the reason why we get a really good player. And then other times we could be still honest and fully transparent with a guy, and he doesn't want to come here because, it's just not a good fit. And it's like, well, I'm not going to tell you that you're going to come here and start, man. Like, I think you have tools and upside. I think we have a guy graduating that spot. I think we have a sophomore and junior that are coming back that you'll compete against. And ultimately, like, you guys got to show up when the lights come on. And, but I think you fit our culture, and I think academically you do a really good job. And I've heard good things about mom and dad. Her dad played college football, so there's a little feel for like college sports, right? And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Other times that's why it works out. But it's essentially why we do what we do. You got to find the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
You're not always going to get the best one, but we just got to find the right one. And I think we've done pretty well. So,
yeah,
I'd say you've done well with that. Looking at the recruiting classes you've had, since we've been there paying attention with Bubba there, man, the last two classes that I've seen have been ridiculous, loaded with good kids too, like guys who get it.
Yeah, great kids, and their parents are even cooler. I love how, even a home game, you could have parents of the guy that maybe hasn't played at all, and his parents are like still there cheering on like the rest of the team. And it's just, I mean, in high school that might happen. In college, I don't know if that happens because like there's a lot more travel associated.
Yeah.
And sometimes our job gets really hard. Sometimes we gotta sit the guy. Sometimes we're like, man, dude, do we roll with this guy back out? Is he confident? Is he ready to go? I mean, yeah, but again, that's why the guys who aren't in the dugout, they're always the greatest coaches, because they don't have to like discuss those things. I mean, conversations on like, hey, you talk about like expensive and inexpensive experiences for players. Like, we got to navigate through that accordingly, man, because it's not about like what he can do right now during this series. It's like, what can he be throughout the duration of his career? That's ultimately like what makes our job really difficult sometimes, is we have to make tough decisions that we think sound awesome. And we've gotten feedback from some older guys because they're overseeing the same thing that we are. And then it could reach that younger player and they are like, what? And it doesn't click with them, or it doesn't resonate with them. But I just think the guys we brought in, man, I just think they've been super selfless, and I think they've worked hard, and I think they've taken advantage of opportunities. And I don't think there's a sense of entitlement. And I think they're a little bit more quiet than maybe the group before them. But I kind of noticed that with each group, the more we keep doing this, like, guys come in very quiet, but then they come out of their shell a little bit, and they start to, you see that you actually get to see them like grow up a little bit, and that's really cool too. So, but yeah,
as soon as you start doing karaoke on the bus, it seems to break open that shell a little bit, eh?
Well, I just know that there is a video out there somewhere, and I'm willing to bet that Justin Major probably has that video, and I don't want to ever see that video. And if you ever got leaked out there, I was asked of me, and that was to perform a song that the guys asked me to do. It was probably really, really bad, but
Oh man,
didn't care.
it's funny how it's all that stuff. Things like that are what you remember when your career's over. You don't think back to the botched ground balls or the pitches you missed or getting rung up. You think back on shit like that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
You know?
Well,
Yeah.
like
trip,
I don't know. I'm in that weird. I'm in a spot in life where like, more of my friends are getting engaged, more of my friends are getting married. Like my wife and I, we're like looking through our calendar and we're like, hey, we got so many freaking weddings this year. So we're getting to that point in our life where things are happening fast, very fast. And it's just, I don't know. I look back on it and the amount of pressure that I put on myself as a player, that I think is why I have the perspective that I do as a coach. And I feel like if I had it figured out as a player, I don't know if I would be maybe how people see me as a coach now. I'd probably be way worse, probably be a little bit more selfish, probably wouldn't have as much understanding. But like my career is a prime example on why people need to navigate through this platform through you guys. Because again, like I would say Bub's first year, and I'll never forget I told him this, and I had to get the curtain down where, he'd put the wall down, and I was just like, man, I think he just spends so much time sometimes worrying about what other people have to say, man. And it's like, who cares? Like, who cares if the other team chirped you? And I'm just like, man, dude, like, I think that's the one thing that I notice in your game. You worry about other people sometimes, and who cares? Like, who cares? And I probably said it in a different way because we're in our office, I'm trying to pump him up, motivate him, whatever. And then, like, just talking with him that summer, I always called him when I was on the road because that's when I was on the road, that's when I would call all of our returners and checking in with our, it would have been our 2023 recruiting class coming in last year. And then when Bubba came back, I mean, it was kind of that with the timeline of you guys starting to do your whole thing and building the platform and creating the content. You guys were doing all these things. And when Bubba came back that fall, it was just different. Like nothing mattered. Everything was super slow to him. He was helping some other guys that we needed to really play well. And I hate saying the word we had to have them play well, but like that's the truth. Like you want older guys to play well. That's why they're the older guy. Like,
Right.
This is your guys' team. Take care of your team. Take care of your people. I feel like Bubba did a really good job at that. And sure, like sometimes, we all fall out of character, right? But it's just like when I look back at how I was as a player, I was so consumed by that. And I felt like that's why Bubba and I clicked really well in that way. Because how I grew up, it was you didn't even leave the small town that I grew up in to begin with. Like everybody worked at the factory or, worked at grandpa's business or worked for their dad or started their own small business or whatever, right? All love, all respect to people who, bust their ass doing those things. But I wanted to go play ball in college. And granted, I thought I was way better than what I was. Like, I'm like telling you, I want to play North Carolina. I want to play at Virginia. I want to play at Ohio. I wasn't good enough to go to any of those places. But when I finally like navigated and through the whole thing, like I lost my dad when I was 16. So I really struggled with, I want to say, I don't want to call it acceptance, but that's probably lack of a better term. I kind of struggled with acceptance and like, hey, you're good enough. Like I had all the support from like my mom and like my grandma and like my aunt, 3 people who never played baseball before. Right. I'm like sitting here like, man, I don't know if I'm good enough. Well, I don't even know how to do this. And I played that first summer before my senior year. And I eventually decided to go to a Division III school and that was fine. And then it was like, I don't know how I handled the response to like my dad passing was really bad. It was, just doing a lot of things you're not supposed to be doing. So when I got to school, I'm like, wow, like none of these guys give 2 shits what I just went through because they didn't know. So they don't care. They just care like if I'm going to be good at baseball and if I'm going to work hard and be about the team. And I'm sitting there like, I went through all this like really bad stuff and kind of dealing with it. And now I'm at school and like my staff told me like, you all right? Not the same guy we recruited, type of thing. Like bad, like kind of a bad talk, honestly. And I got really insecure about it. So now I'm like, I don't know, you're just like on this whole, like, I got to prove everybody wrong tour. And that's like the wrong place to be. You know, lost a bunch of weight, got to play my freshman year, felt super confident. Now, granted, I only hit like, I don't know, like 250 or something. But I was like, all right, you know, freshman, hit 250, blah, 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 blah. I got to do all this stuff. Started working with the hitting coach. Out of respect to him, I will keep his name private. Started working with him, and then like I'm learning a bunch about like your swing and your body. And you're learning so much stuff. So now you feel like a little bit of a know-it-all. Now you feel like you know more than these guys over here. And my sophomore year, dude, I started the year out really hot, and then I got ice cold, and I struggled with everything. Like we'd win a game, and I would be happy we won, but I would be so bothered still that I played bad. And how I would view that as a coach is you're being selfish, extremely selfish. I'm looking back like, man, dude, did I create a lot of my own problems, not realizing how I was actually acting because I was more consumed with how I was feeling instead of just like finding ways to compete within the environment that I was in, regardless of good, bad, in between. Didn't matter if I agreed with what we were doing at the practice. That's my coach. We need to do it at a high level. And then it's just like that the precedent just, it gets higher as you get older, like, because you have to take care of those that are under you coming in. And then we get a new coach my junior year, and now I'm playing a different position. And, you know, I get moved to the position behind, you know, the returning all conference players. So my whole mentality in the fall was, well, I'm not going to play. I'm playing behind this guy. I was just super negative, man. I mean, freaking love my wife, dude, because she'd come up and watch a game. I'd play bad. She's happy-go-lucky. You know, she's been waiting all week to see me, and I'm just like sitting there like, I want nothing to do with nobody or anything. And it's just, I hate to say it, man, but when I was done playing, it was like a huge sense of relief. I was like relieved in a really weird way. Like I was sad because I felt like during my senior year, I figured it out. Didn't care. It was like, okay, who cares how I'm swinging it? If I'm finding barrels and putting together good at-bats and getting on base, if I'm just doing my job, whatever the coach asked me to do, if I'm just doing my job, that will get me on the field. So I started painting a picture like that. And instead of being consumed by like, how am I compared to this guy? Well, what are these guys doing? I'm in the cage busting my ass. I'm like waking up at 7 a.m. and going to hit off the tee before class. And that was just so stupid. It was so stupid of me, where probably the best adjustment would be to like actually take the day off and to like go home on the off weekend that the coach gave us because I've been on campus the whole entire year. Or I don't know, there was just so many ways to combat that. And then when COVID shut down my senior season, like I said, I felt so relieved. And like, wow, I don't have to try to be good enough anymore. And that was so weird, because then when I started coaching, I was like, baseball literally is just something we all get to do. It's not who we are. It's just something we all get to do. And how I didn't see it. And that's what drove me crazy is we had guys where I'm like, well, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. And he's playing well. I'm over here giving the most possible shits that anybody could, and I'm not playing well. Hell, I'm not even playing at all. Like, what's going on? It was just like victimhood created by my own thing. And that's just not the right thing. Like, that's just not the right way to live. And I feel like that's why I'm able to relate to guys, because I kind of know what the early warning signs of a guy almost taking that over for his game maybe looks like. And maybe that helps on the relationship side. I don't know. But like, that's my whole story. I would have killed to have something like this, because even myself going through, I think I'm 4 or 5 chapters in out of like the 18 total. I mean, I like have, you know, I was like sitting here taking notes on it, and it's just like, hesitant action does not produce good outcomes. And it's like, do not let circumstances dictate how you feel. And it's like, dude, that's all I did. And that's crazy. And I wonder why, like, the latest drill didn't help me, like, go hit 320. Just crazy.
All right, we had a little brief delay there because Greg's computer just broke, so that's nice. Episode 1 of the virtual and his computer broke. It sucks. But yeah, man, we want to say thank you for all that. And it's cool as you continue to go through like the program and you see there are so many things from what we've heard from players, especially college guys, primarily college and some pro guys is, oh, that makes sense. And it actually puts a philosophy or a principle or a visual onto what was going through my head or what is going through my head. And that was our goal. Is being able to filter these concepts down into a baseball context and deliver it to where, like, at some point a light will come on for a lot of guys. Now, this is for players. You totally different. You're a coach. You've been through it. But for players, it might be chapter 2. It might be chapter 18. But that light bulb will come on, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay. So I've been using the belief cycle to hurt myself rather than help myself." Or, "Oh, I've been using visualization and tapping into my subconscious but my entire life, but I've been doing it to kick my own ass and hurt myself rather than help myself," you know? So it's super cool to hear your perspective. And I can say for both Greg and I that we are very happy that you're liking it so far. So,
And no, I think it's actually good for coaches too, right? Because I mean, we have to make decisions. Like, we could be super excited about something, have a plan, it doesn't work out, question ourselves. I mean, a real thing that coaches can do. And have. So I think it just kind of helps us all. I mean, it helps coaches, I think, get better. Definitely helps players get better because they're the ones playing at the end of the day. But I also think it can teach coaches on how to utilize just certain terminology within their guys, because language is everything. Guys, you can dive into it deep. Some guys, you got to keep it unapologetically simple. Other guys, you just got to kind of pick and choose your battles a little bit. But ultimately, we're just trying to get the best out of them. And in return, they want the best out of us too. So,
right. Yeah. That's awesome, man. We appreciate you. Well, shoot, Mike, thanks for coming on, brother. Seriously. Yeah, it was cool that our first episode was with you, man. Keep doing your thing. We're going to be following as usual in the spring. Lake Erie College D2. If you're a guy that, hears from Mike, talk to him. He's a good dude and he knows what he's doing. And they're a great program. So, yeah, next episode coming soon, probably next week. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate you, man.